So we've been working over these affordances, these possibilities in technology-mediated environments, and the possibility I want to talk about now is encapsulated in the phrase differentiated instruction, a commonly used phrase. So let me take as my counterpoint the classical classroom. Differentiated instruction was sort of, logistically not that easy to do. And my message is that I think it's now so much easier to do that it makes more sense to do it than, the efficiencies have kicked in such a way that it actually works better to do it. Whereas in the past, there was a kind of set of logics about why you didn't do it. And the logic was it's just easier to talk to the whole class about the one topic, teacher lecture. It's easier to have all the students doing the same chapter at the same time. It's easier to have them do the test at the same time about that chapter at the end. And it's based on a kind of a premise that the class is as homogenous as possible. So it's based on a fundamental presumption about learner similarities. Now, how did we do that? We did that by grading classes, A, B, C, D, depending on ability levels. And we did it by actually grading classes by age level as well, by year, which is actually a very, people's maturity and capacities don't correlate with years, but we did that. And in order to keep things as the same as possible, we let some students move ahead and kept some back. So it was a whole system, if you like, a system of institutionalised sameness, constantly recalibrating where you put kids and what you get them to do based on trying to make groups the same. And of course, on the same page at the same time, doing the same thing at the same time, learning the same narrative at the same time, as if everybody in the world is the same, their experience is the same, and what they need to know is identical. So a whole pile of very deep assumptions there. A nice little University of Illinois story, which I quite like, is this is the place where the idea of special education was invented. And that historically was actually the first crack in this edifice of sameness. So the first crack was a kind of a recognition that certain groups of students who back then were regarded as sitting in some disability space at one end, and the other end were regarded as exceptional, which are the students who were doing really well. They needed to be treated as different, and the first special ed anywhere really was invented here in the College of Ed by some really important people in the late 1940s, essentially, is when that began, which then became Head Start and a whole lot of profoundly influential things. But this was really the first crack in the institutional armour, beginning to recognise that students are not all the same.
Differentiated learning has become another one of those norms that is vital in any kind of learning environment. Equality, of course, does not mean sameness. And sameness, if we deliver the same kind of experience to a group of learners, will not necessarily produce equality. It's easy to say those things, but in a traditional classroom, it is very, very hard to address differentiated learning and to meet the needs of the whole group in relation to the curriculum or the syllabi or the individuals within it, or even groups within it, without extra people coming into the classroom. And even then it's very hard with the traditional timetable and the traditional periods and the traditional way in which we organise the day to be able to address what we know matters in learning outcomes and performance, and that's differentiated learning. The digital ecologies and the new learning spaces afforded by technologies does provide us with the affordance, the opportunity, to have a group of learners in a space where not all of them have to be tracking the same page, the same task at the same time. It is possible to create learning experiences for individuals and for groups with specific needs, and to be able then to pace either the whole group or to pace the individual, to track an individual or to track the whole class, to intervene within that learning process, either for the whole class or the individual, in order to adjust the instruction, to adjust the data, to adjust the information that the learner has or the class has, in order that they're able to meet their goals. Why does it matter that we can do that? We know the data and the research that tells us that every child in the classroom, even if they're the same age or even if they're the same background, are unique in some way. Their orientation to learning, or their behaviours, or their understanding of their purpose is moulded by each one's life experience. But we say, when we take in a classroom, when we run schools, that we're delivering on the promise of democracy. And that is that all learners, when they come into a school setting, will have the opportunity to reach their aspirations and to fulfil their goals. And that we as educators have a responsibility not to getting through the curriculum, not to covering the subject area as educators and as people who can show plans that do that. We have a responsibility to show that every learner is transformed, every learner progresses, every learner is able to understand and engage with and represent knowledge in a way that meets the needs of them being an educated person that can move through the formal school system and go right through to college. It matters for us because the digital space does allow, if we interrogate it, for us to tailor-make learning experiences and instructions. And learners don't any longer have to sit in the classroom waiting while the teacher attends to the needs of one child, or waiting until the hand that they have in the air is answered. It's not necessary to waste the amount of time we do waste for learners. The data suggests to us at the moment that in any particular kind of learning environment, a student might have, between 15 and 20 minutes of exchanges with an educator, given how busy a class experience is. With that little capacity to ask questions, that little capacity to get feedback in those face-to-face classrooms, a lot of time for many learners is wasted time. It's not organised in a way that produces learning or their progress. Working within digital spaces does allow us to harness the attention of every learner, to tailor-make the learning to their needs, to track whether they are performing or not performing, and to adjust what we're doing. It does provide us with these affordances for ensuring that all learners can be engaged. So, what does it mean for us as educators? Certainly, it means a different kind of planning. It certainly means collaborating. Again, collaborative intelligence for teachers in preparing work and instruction in this space is also key to the kinds of solutions that are possible. It means designing lessons with the learners in mind, not only with just pacing one's way through the standards or with any kind of curriculum. It's aligning the standards to individuals' needs and deconstructing them and reconstructing them in order to pace individuals and groups so that they can progress towards higher order goals. It does mean for the teacher expanding their instructional repertoires to be able to address all the learners in the classroom, and as well as expanding their capacity to work with others to bring in experts through the digital ecologies that might be able to support individual learners. All of this is made possible for us. They're the sorts of things we've always wanted to do in classrooms. They're the sorts of things that much research tells us need to be done. They're not things we don't know about. They're not things that we're not aware of as educators. The problem is that when theorists come and talk about these things or speak about their data, educators end up again in this one classroom with X number of children, usually on their own, maybe with a little aid, with some written textbooks and some standards that they have to meet. And they're left to manage the behaviours and the emotions and the interests of the children generally on their own. And that is a very difficult ecology to manage. In fact, it's one of the reasons why we have behaviour and behaviour problems as one of the most intervening barriers to addressing standards or curriculum. How do you deal with children who are in their private lives engaging all the time through the new technologies that are in their home? They have their iPads and their iPhones and their digital televisions, and they're texting their parents, and they're, sending photos to their friends. Increasingly, they are much more active as agents in a communication process through these devices that don't mean they have to wait, don't mean they have to put their hand up, don't even mean they have to talk on the phone anymore, that somebody has to answer the phone. The message is delivered to where they want to send it. We put them in a classroom where those ways of being are not made possible. They get frustrated, they are bored, they act out, they annoy somebody. It's natural to have that kind of way of dealing with the constraints of a classroom that is becoming less and less connected with the way in which meaning is made and represented outside of the classroom.